Hey guys, and welcome! Better Than a Let's Play, episode 32. I'm Enigmius, and today we're building the breeding wings on the Testificate mega structure. Up till now, everything that we've been doing with this project has been entirely structural, meaning that once you build it, it's built. There's not much more that you can do with it. There's not much more that it's going to do. It's just going to sit there as a structure with walls and windows. We don't even have any doors anywhere in this yet, just because it didn't strike me as important to add in doors at this point. Now, one of the things with Testificates is unless you want to spend a phenomenal amount of time cruising around your world looking for one village after another and zapping Testificates home with a portal gun, or don't even think about hurting them. It's not hurting, as in trying to coax them to follow you all the way back to your structure. That would be ludicrous, but I mean, the point being, the easiest way to get a certain population of Testificates into a particular structure that you've made is to breed them, which means you abduct 2 minimum and put them in an environment where they will breed, which is, there's some very specific rules, namely, there has to be a door, and the door has to be a proper door, which is to say that there's a solid block above the door, and there have to be more outside blocks on one side of the door than on the other. Now, outside blocks are defined by blocks that have access to the sun whenever the sun might happen to be out, which means it can't be underground, basically, and it means, specifically in our case, it can't be in a covered area, which kind of rules out the lion's share of the actual structures inside the build itself. So what this means is we have to extend these wings out and away from the structure, out into the sunlight, so to speak, even though it's always dark and rainy here. It still counts as sunlight, so that when we start abducting Testificates, they will breed, they will multiply, and then hopefully some of them will wander away and go outside the boundaries of the village, so to speak, so that we can breed more and more and more. Now, there are certain ways that we might be able to do that. There might be some coaxing later on with the portal gun as well, just moving things around within the structure itself. But for the time being, I just want to set myself up so that I can get some Testificates moved in here, and then while we're working on the rest of the structure, they'll be breeding and doing their thing in relative privacy. So you can see, the build that we're working on here isn't really super elaborate at this point. We've used some microblocks to kind of add a little bit of visual interest, soften up the edges. We're using glass on the outside for rails to both contain the Testificates so that they don't fall off and drown. Mostly they would drown. I think from the position where they're in now, there wouldn't be anything for them to land on. They would just go directly into the ocean. And for all practical intents and purposes, they would be lost to us. So we're making sure that they can't get away and fall off the platform. And also, doing it with glass means that we can have multiple layers with outside blocks registered properly. That's basically the main thing that I was going for. And then having done the basics of the one structure you see sort of at the top there with the 2 layers, it was just a matter of duplicating that structure down below, and that gives us a fairly reasonable amount of space to breed Testificates. Now, the rule is, if you add up all of the eligible doors in the structure, meaning doors that follow that rule of more outside blocks on one side than the other, if you take all those doors and add them up, the maximum number of Testificates that village can contain is 35% of that number. So I can tell you, when this is all said and done, we ended up with 70 doors, meaning that for this particular build, we're looking at about 23 to 25 Testificates maximum population, unless they move away from the village area far enough that it calculates more, or we do some sneaky tricks with doors later on that expand on that without necessarily forcing us to make a larger structure for them to breed in. So, one way or another, if we grab a couple of Testificates and just let them do their thing, like the Discovery Channel, for a little while, we should be in good shape. That's the theory, And you know, with me, it always starts out with a theory, and then we find out that for whatever reason, it doesn't quite work that way, and then sometimes we can recover and sometimes we can't. Well, in this case, it turned out to be a little bit different from what I was expecting. Now, one of the things you might notice is the microblocks in the columns between the doors, and that was just done for visual interest. And also, most of the time, like as a player, I can't walk through those door sections, even though it's just a half a block that's there. That counts as a full block in terms of impeding my ability to walk through, which I thought would apply to everything. That turned out to not be the case. And also, the railing situation that I built with the glass wasn't adequate to keeping everything properly contained, which was fine because it's easy enough to fix. We just fill in the gaps and we turn it into, instead of a balcony with rails that you can look over, it's more a glass wall. You can see it's starting to look kind of interesting from a distance if you can get by all the chunks loading and unloading. There's still lots of work left to be done. It's a huge project, but I'm having fun with it, and now that we've got these wings in place, I'm just coming back actually in this footage here from the central tower. You can see this is one of those rare situations where I'm actually using live recorded footage instead of time-lapse. I've got a spot loader which loads one chunk. You just plunk it there, and whatever chunk it's in, it keeps that loaded. I spawned it in. I don't care. If I happen to open my inventory and you see it's in creative mode, it's because I spawned in my spot loader, and I'm totally okay with it. The portal gun that I'm using, I picked up from one of my various different dungeon spelunking, whatever, mineshaft expeditions. I always end up with at least a half dozen of those in most worlds. This one I only one because we've spent so much of our time building with microblocks instead of farming materials to build machines. So that's basically what we're doing, is we're setting ourselves up now so that we can go and we can abduct some testificates with our portal gun, send them back here, and let them do what the testificates are apt to do. Now, the main thing is we've got the chunk loader, so it's going to keep this area loaded. And then we need to have one portal in a position where they're not going to fall and kill themselves. You can see there's some elevation, but also I want to set myself up so that once they go through the portal, they can't turn around and walk back through it again, because that would just be ridiculous. So that's why it's elevated, so that as soon as they come through the portal, they drop down to a place where they can't reach the portal again, and then they only fall a couple blocks, so they don't take any damage whatsoever. Now, I noticed I've come across villages in this world, but I haven't bothered to place any waypoints marking them, because after a while, village is a village, and I completely forgot that I had a village just across from the central towers. So I didn't even have to go looking for a village, but I went looking for a village anyways, and I found this, which, as villages go, is pretty tiny. It's 2 buildings, I think, and maybe like a third little tiny building there somewhere, and hardly anyone in it, but it's still a village, and I was like, I'll take it. I don't need anything special. And then it's, we're flying, we're doing the UFO alien abduction thing. You see this guy, he saw his pal got abducted, so he's running and hiding. I'm debating whether or not I should abduct the pigs as well. But realistically speaking, that's it. 2 testificates is all I got out of this entire village. And then there's the obligatory dorking around. What kind of goodies can I find here? What's in the chests? What's in the stuff? But 2 testificates is enough to get us started. And also, if they start falling off the structure, I'd rather have it with just 2 testificates than, trying to find 6 or 8 or whatever and taking all the time to get them out there and then find out that they're just going to fall out of the structure and die. So there's a little bit of testing going on, but there's also a little bit of practicality in terms of I don't want to spend a ton of time abducting testificates. For some reason, I saw that glowstone. I was like, I want it. I don't. It's the only block of glowstone I have, but I want it. And then I don't remember why I was zapping more stuff with the portal gun. I think I was just kind of goofing around. It happens. So then we come back. It wasn't actually very far. We didn't have to go very far, but we end up back here. We've got the structure. I'm really enjoying the way that it's turning out. It needs, I think, some color contrast because right now it's just a lot of gray on gray. But we can get that sorted in the future. Now, one of the things that I noticed, you can see the hearts already. And not only that, but from the 2 testificates that we abducted, in the time it took for us to get back, they made at least one more that has grown up to be an adult. They didn't waste any time whatsoever. And then I thought it would be kind of neat to do like a time-lapse of the inside of the structure and see what's going on with the testificates. I was kind of hoping to see this exponential population explosion where they would just kind of go blah all over the place. But this is where I learned, unfortunately, that the little baby testificates could bypass all of the security measures that I had in place. They could sneak in behind the microblocks. They could jump up on the glass rails of the structures and basically go where they wanted. Now, as far as I know, none of them actually fell off, but they all escaped from this particular structure. So I think maybe there was one that was there briefly, but the bottom line is there's like 4 guys in this structure now, and there's 4 guys outside the structure that started off as babies and they grow up to adults and they just started breeding on their own. So that's what we did. Now I'm gonna do a few more refinements on the structures, just in the name of keeping the testificates sort of contained where we want them, sort of thing. I'm probably going to link them to some of the larger structures and try and coax them out into that area to get more and more testificates breeding if we can. And see, I put up a glass wall blocking the testificates from hanging around the cameraman because they like to do that sometimes. Sometimes. So, yeah. You get the idea. So the next episode, we'll probably see a little bit more testificate action, and then we're going to start in the area underneath the super crazy turbine, because that's going to be an area where there's going to be lots of testificates, and we're going to figure out ways to get them down there from the upper levels, and then that'll be the structure. It'll be done. It'll be full of testificates, ready to breed and do what testificates do, and then we'll be moving on. So by all means, leave your comments and feedback. If you want to be notified when I add the next video, you can always subscribe to my channel. That's one way. Another way is to follow me on Twitter at Enigmius1 or on Google plus Enigmius1. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.